Welcome, friends, back to another episode of the Performance Mindset Show. I'm your host, Amy Calandrino. I'm CEO of Beyond Commercial, and I'm also author of the book From Perfect to Real that's coming out really soon, or might actually have already come out. But check it out. It's on Amazon, also on Ingram Sparks as well. The show is all about leveling up in business, real estate, leadership, and life by shifting how you think, grow, and lead. Each week, I'll bring you real conversations with top performers and mindset experts who are building big lives on their own terms. If you're ready to ditch perfection, trust your path, and grow with intention, you're in the right place. And while you're at it, please press the subscribe button. Let's get right to it. So I have with me today my friend, Erik Sexton. He is a fellow SIOR. He is based in Las Vegas.
Yes, ma'am.
And we met on X. So so I think after all of us kind of finish our work days and we want to relax, what else better to do than talk about life and then also yak about different things going on in commercial real estate, because we just did not get quite enough during the day, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a comparison of different notes. I mean, when we get during the day, we're dealing with clients and bankers. We just had a group in here talking about loans in our office. They did a brainstorming session, but when it's after hours and it's on X, formerly known as Twitter, there's a lot of brokers who just compare notes. It's honestly like a crash course in the industry on like best practices and problems. I mean, I tweet all the time, or I don't know what you're supposed to say now. X, I X.
I think it's post. You
comment.
make a post.
Yeah, I post just things I come across with every day on X.
Mm-hmm.
Just how to deal with a commission situation or maybe another broker, and the feedback you get is incredibly valuable. So if you're a broker and you're not on that platform, it's got a really big commercial real estate community.
It's kind of like phone a friend. Remember that show, I Want to Be a Millionaire? It's like
100%.
It's like
no, but it is. It's like if you're stuck in your market, like I'm in Las Vegas, I'm licensed in California and in Nevada. But like if I have an issue and I need with maybe a broker, I don't want to stay in my network here in town because maybe the broker I have an issue with is friends with the person I'm calling, and you don't know what the relationship is. And when you go to a platform like X, there's people who we call it experience share. They just share maybe a situation that was similar to what you're asking about, and they might DM you and be like, hey, this happened to me and this is how I handled it. So I think it's a really good platform for like best practices.
It's really underutilized, but that's to our advantage. So.
Right? Yeah.
It's great. Have you gotten any deals out of Twitter? X?
I've gotten some. I did a listing proposal on one. A guy here in Las Vegas, he owned a little like a 3,400 square foot industrial building, and he called me, pulled up my number, and I asked him. I always ask that question: how'd you find me? And he said, I follow you on Twitter. And I was like, that's interesting. So we did a proposal for him, and I did. We got a listing. This a couple of years ago, nothing recent, but I did get a lead out of it.
I mean, you never know. People could be reading your X as well, and following up. So
100%, and it's kind of top of mind too. Like I kind of like to keep track of who follows me or comments on things, and there's a decent amount of people in Las Vegas in my market who do follow me, which is neat. So eventually that might turn into a deal.
Well, there's a lot of lurkers. Some that don't even like it, and you don't even know they're watching you, but they're lurking.
The silent followers. There's a lot of those out there with even like fake accounts that follow you, hater accounts.
Oh, I've been crucified online. That's a whole other conversation for another day.
That's okay. It's still content. It's still comments. But no, fun. Thanks for having me. I always like doing these podcasts because you get a chance to kind of chat and take some time and really just it's like having coffee, except you're being recorded.
I never thought of it that way. Yeah. That's awesome. But no, it's been great. I've been on a few different podcasts, and, it's interesting, the feedback I get when, people hear it and follow up. And I always like to listen back to my podcast too. So that's kind of fun. So how did you get into commercial real estate? I always hear different stories, whether people starting residential, come over to commercial, or the family was in it, or, there's so many different iterations, but how did you come to be into commercial real estate?
I moved to Las Vegas to go to UNLV, running Rebels, go Rebels. And I was just looking for a part-time job because I had to work when I was in college because I had to pay for school and, buy gas and all that fun stuff. Try to have a little bit of fun. I bumped into some brokers, just kind of a friend of a friend of a friend. I was actually supposed to valet at this country club party like be a valet, park people's cars, and all these like young brokers showed up. Again, this is like 20 years ago. They're in their 50s now, and they were like late 20s, early 30s. This is pre-recession, driving all these amazing cars and all the fancy watches. And I'm like, what do these guys do? And they told me as they were getting hammered at the house. And I exchanged information with one of them, and he called me a couple weeks later and was like, hey, I need an assistant. And I told him, I'm a full-time college student. So I became a broker's assistant in 2005. Oh, well, technically in 2004, I started the job. But in 2005, I went and got my license. I was a freshman in college. And I had no idea what I was doing. He hired me, and he's like, go unlock this door, go get my car washed. I cleaned the office. I was literally like, there's no cleaning service because we were a small brokerage. I cleaned the bathrooms and vacuumed and took the trash out every Friday. So it's just a jack of all trades. But, it introduced me to an industry. I didn't get really any commissions. I was on this bonus structure where the most I could make was $500 on a deal. But that's okay. I was 19. Well, the way I looked at it was like, if I do a deal and I make $500 and someone's making $15 or $10 an hour, I'm still ahead of the curve. So, compared to what he was making and what I was making him, different. But yeah, it was just a total random place. I was hired to be a valet at a country club party, like a Saturday night party, met some brokers, and that's how I was introduced to it.
It's funny, Kaylin, that's also really popular on X. She was a bottle service gal. It was like the one thing that she could do while she was going to college, and then she would see all these brokers dropping all this money, and she's like, well, these guys can do it, I can. So,
well, Las Vegas is notorious for that. I mean, you think about, every single one of my friends when I was in college in Las Vegas, as soon as they turned 21, were a VIP host at a nightclub or a cocktail waitress. Or, I knew women who were in their early 20s that would do like a summer of doing like these pool clubs, like rehab or something like that. They'd make $100,000 in 6 months. And they make perfect agents when you think about it, because they know how to deal with people. They're dealing with drunk people, and they know how to handle money. So it's like the perfect way to learn how to kind of progress. Obviously, you can't do that forever. So a lot of people get knocked for they're like, oh, they were a bottle service girl, especially here in Las Vegas, because we have so many clubs. And you're like, that's like the best crash course training you could possibly have. You're dealing with drunk guys, dealing with money, women that are being dramatic and guys fighting and all that stuff. So I think it's a pretty good kind of transition.
I have a theory, totally unrelated to commercial real estate, but I think that alcohol either it brings out the best in you or the worst in you. So you're either an angry drunk or you're like, I love you, it's amazing. That's my belief.
I think that's a very fair assessment. And again, living in Las Vegas for 20 years, we some of our commercial real estate events, I think, have the tendency to get a little more rowdy than a lot of places, because we don't have a last call here. I don't care if people say, when I was 25, I thought a last call was a dumb idea. As I got older, I think it's a great rule. But, you go in California, I think it's 2 a.m. But in Las Vegas, you can literally go out from a Friday to a Sunday and go dinner, club, after hours club, pool club, and start all over again the next morning. So, I would agree with the emotion. It brings out the best or worst in people.
I'm a happy drunk, as you might say. So it's like peace, love, and harmony. So.
Yeah.
And overly generous. So don't, next time we get together, no.
That's funny.
I'm buying everybody bottles. And so anyways, which is good. But anyways, so you got into that. And so you had your first entree into commercial real estate. And so when did you start doing deals on your own, and how did you build up that repertoire?
Oh, I was 19. I was 19, freshman in college. I switched to taking night classes and working full time. I also took a Saturday class 1 year. That was a terrible idea. But no, my broker was really good at networking and meeting people. But as far as teaching me the brokerage world, he wasn't really that hands on. He kind of just threw me into the deep end. And I asked a lot of questions, and I credit the brokerage community to some extent in Las Vegas, because I was really green. I'd go on tours and I wasn't dressed properly, or maybe I people would ask me questions and I'd write them down, but I'd have no idea. And some experienced brokers at the time would be like, hey, here's some questions you need to ask the owner. like that kind of stuff. So it's just kind of trial and error. I was with him for a number of years until I switched brokerages and went to, I was at Sperry Van Ness for a long time, which was now is SVN. All the brokerages like to be cool and have acronyms. Jones Lang LaSalle is JLL and Sperry Van Ness is. But anyways, that brokerage, we had a really good broker who was just a very persistent guy who taught us how to, do cold calls and use a CRM and pull up property information, like really put a system in place and how to like properly do it. So I was like grateful for the time with that first brokerage because it was kind of like I had to figure out like zoning and all that stuff. But then when I got put with a real brokerage and broker that had like, fundamentals, that was really where it was a game changer for me.
I think systems are key. I recorded another podcast actually earlier. One of my clients that's scaling up to 60 employees, and he said the systems and the repeatability and all of those things is when you can really kind of grow. But if it's different every time and there's no continuity, and definitely commercial real estate, you can put together some systems. Like, yes, things will kind of vary on the buyer seller side, from transaction to transaction, but generally it's, there's some general fundamentals that are the same.
Well, I mean, systems in place, you should absolutely have your systems in place. If you don't have a CRM, I always tweet or post on X about that, or like having an email campaign or like presence on social media. Like you should be marketing to your clients all the time through mail, email, and just, following up with them on phone calls. And a CRM and marketing campaigns are the best way to do that. And they're really not that expensive. It's just up to you to implement those and be disciplined enough to put them into place.
I think that talking about mailers, I think that is a underrated thing that people don't think to do, whether it's, just listed a property and telling another owner around it. What type of mailers do you tend to do?
So I use mail for two things. One, I'm still a big believer in letters. Like I send a lot of letters. So if I cold call somebody, email them, they don't call me back, they're going to get a letter from me a couple days later. Mm-hmm. I do that. It's time consuming. I handwrite the envelope because people are more prone to open up envelopes if it's got a handwritten address. I use mail a lot for that, but we do postcards. So we have our CRM, and then we send out just listed or just sold a lot. Quarterly, we send out a kind of a postcard that just has vacancy rates and just some basic data as far as like average price per square foot, that kind of stuff. And I imagine that a lot of that stuff gets thrown away, but again, it's just top of mind. If they get an Erik Sexton postcard 12 times a year, like they're going to remember you to some extent. So a lot of it you need to think of like the information's great, but I think a lot of people just overthink the postcards. A lot of it is just getting your name in front of those people. But yeah, I like to add value as far as like the sale comp. So if we sell something, we send a postcard so people know like what the going rate is for that type of building, and we catalog them as far as like if we rented, sell a 5,000 foot owner user building, I'm not sending that postcard to Prologis because they don't, which they're the biggest industrial landlord on the planet. They're not. I know you know that, but just for people listening, you need to be a little targeted as well. Yeah,
I agree. And, I try to do that as well. It's interesting. One of my buildings that I own right now, I sold a building and then 1031'd into two buildings. But at first it was just going to be one. I got one building under contract and I was like, I should get the building next door, shouldn't I? And I could not get through to the gatekeeper. She kept like turning me away. And then I figured out who the owner was and I mailed a letter to his house and just said, hey, I'm buying the building next door and you're never going to get more money than you will from, the building next door. It's going to be much more valuable to me than anybody else. And, he called me and then I got a purchase and sale contract done and then was able to loop that into the 1031 that I was going through. Yeah. But I mean, it works. So I've done it for clients too. Yeah.
Yeah. Huge thing. In 2018, I had a 6,000 square foot metal building listed. And I always send mailers to the neighboring properties when I list it, because a lot of times the best buyer is the neighbor. And a guy who had a 270 unit storage unit called me, and we started talking about the project. And 60 days later, I had that listed as well. And ironically, the same buyer bought both properties, and it was just from sending letters that cost me probably $30 to do in a couple hours of my time.
No, I'm a big believer. And it's one of the ways I built my business is just like that art of the personal touch. And so, and that's why actually, when I rebranded my firm, it's 9 years this year to Beyond Commercial, is because I feel like, it's always trying to do beyond and the extra touch. So, that's something you learned early on and have deployed and, has been really successful for you. What type of you primarily focus in industrial?
90% of what I do is industrial. Yeah. Even in the industrial world, I don't do a lot of like corporate tenant rep work. I'm more like the, call it the owner user, the person who built their own company. So I've got a handful of clients that are like 1 to 200 employees, but you're still dealing with the person who founded it from 2 people and now it's bigger, or just, like that 10 to 20 employees. So that kind of, owner user versus like corporate. And then I deal with a handful of family offices too. So just like, rich families that I say they're buying properties for their grandkids because they're just looking generational wealth. And the way they buy is a lot different than a lot of institutions or these syndication companies.
Well, that's what I recall when we talked on X. Like it's refreshing to hear someone that has the same approach. Like I'm all like small, medium-sized businesses and helping them scale, helping them to build generational wealth. And I think you could pay rent to someone else for a long time, but then to be able to pay rent to yourself and those types of things. And you actually handle all the different lifestyles. Are there any deals that like stand out to you that because you've done a lot?
Yeah, like you mean a specific deal that I did that was like a noteworthy one?
Yeah.
There's been some very big learning curve ones that are the ones that excite me as long as I've been doing it. I've done some industrial laundry facilities. And when you think about like here in Las Vegas, especially the amount of sheets and towels and robes and rags and tablecloths that go into like the Venetian, I think there's like over 7,000 hotel rooms in the Venetian Palazzo, which is those 2 properties, and all the restaurants and all that. Like just the laundry that goes into that place is shocking. So one of my first big deals was an industrial laundry facility, and it was really a learning curve as far as like, how much a water hookup cost and how the workflow goes, where the vans come in and then where the sheets get unloaded and where they wash them and fold them. And the machines are so heavy that they had to like reinforce the concrete, cut it out and like that kind of stuff. So like, it was just really interesting to do that deal because it opened your eyes to a whole nother part of like the city where I just didn't do the deal. You start to think, you're like, oh, wow, like this is a huge part of our economy, because if you get to a hotel and there's no sheets or towels, people are not going to be really happy. So like, those things need to work. They're running 24 hours a day. They typically have 3 8-hour shifts. Even that, being introduced to a business where they're running 24 hours a day and having the 3 8-hour shifts. Like I never heard of that. Or going, like people have, they'll work 4 days a week and they do 2 10-hour shifts. So they're running 20 hours a week and then 4 hours they're closed, kind of thing. So just kind of opening the eyes to that. So the industrial laundry was really interesting to me. I've done a handful of like gun related projects, like where they have to do their FFL, the federal firearms license. That's definitely a process, but I don't know. I like all of them. I really like manufacturing stuff because I always talk about this. I'm a broken record with this, is like you really get a kind of a front seat to what makes the economy go. Everything you're wearing or everything that gets made goes through a warehouse space. And like here in Las Vegas, seafood gets through a climate controlled distribution place. Like it's a big refrigerator, or where the liquor, how that gets distributed, or how metal gates get made, or just any of that manufacturing. It's so fascinating. Like the machines need certain power and safety, life safety stuff. It's just really interesting to me. So like the real estate is fun, but what goes in it and the people who like create things, to me, is like the best thing in the world. It's really fun to become like part of their team, and as they grow, you grow kind of situation.
Yes.
So I hope that answers your question.
Do you have a local it answers it. Do you have a local manufacturing association?
I don't have an answer to that. I don't know.
Oh, okay, cool. No, in Orlando, we it's interesting. They have a very like vibrant one, and they do plant tours and all these different things, and it's kind of cool. So you were talking about how they work, and I was like, yeah. So it's kind of fun to go see the different businesses and how they work. Even if
I just get to do that for my job. Yeah. I mean, I'm in all those things anyways. I mean, even Republic Services, which is our like trash service here in Clark County, which is where Las Vegas is. Excuse me. They do like plant tours of where the recycling plant is, or even like the water reclamation where the water essentially gets treated. You can go do tours with those. And like, I've gotten to do tours with those just because of my work. But like, even here in Las Vegas, you think kiosks like the gambling machines, like they're not just an old school machine where you put in a quarter and pull the lever and they spin. I mean, they have themes of like Dukes of Hazzard and Star Wars, and they build these really intricate games. And those aren't just these mechanical things anymore. Those companies, a lot of them are based here in town who are clients. They have to have, graphic artists and software engineers. And then they have metal cutting rooms. And then they have clean rooms where they actually need to put the actual like mechanical things together. And if some dust gets in it, it screws it all up. It's like, it's I don't know. I love it. It's super fascinating to see all that stuff.
Yeah. I think, getting to see kind of the life cycle of another business just gives you like a whole different, you're almost like looking under the hood.
Yeah.
I guess, so to speak. Yeah. That's super cool.
And I just never realized that until I got into this business of how much work goes into like getting you whatever you have in your backyard, like the patio furniture that gets manufactured maybe in Mexico or China, and it gets put on a train or a ship and works its way to my backyard. Like it's pretty crazy when you think about like international logistics and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, it's a big deal. And like, how are you going to get it, and, supply chain and all those types of things, and how that kind of shifted after COVID, and, having to stay, it's not just finding a space, but you do have to understand all the different aspects related to it. So one question, obviously, with it being more of a show about mindset, is obviously you face a lot of rejection in commercial real estate, and you have to be very resilient. How have you found? What tools have you found or you deploy to keep up a strong mindset?
I'm fortunate enough that I was raised with a lot of sports, and I think having some disappointments as a little kid, going into, teenage and high school and college, where like you lose something when you get into business, kind of gives you a little bit thicker skin. But I'm honestly kind of oblivious to it at this point. Like if I don't get a deal, I don't get mad about it, because I've been doing this long enough that you realize that person might come back around and work with you. So if you're really fighting for a listing and they go with somebody else, like I'm annoyed, and I think about what else could I have done to win that listing. But the next thing I do is I'll call that person and say, hey, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I see you went with this broker. Is there something I did or they did that they won it? Like what was the determining factor for you? And, often they'll say something to me that I'll be like, I did say that, and it was something I did. Or he's like, well, this other broker told me they had this tool. And I'm like, well, I have that tool. I just didn't tell you about it. And that's why they went with it. I'll give you an example. There's a building I've had listed here in town for like forever, probably 15 years. And the guy called me and he was asking me if I wanted to sell it. That's probably about an $8 million deal. And I told him, I wrote out the buyer profile and what they would do. And he called me. He's like, the argument you sent me makes sense. I should just keep it. And like, I was like, okay. So like I gave him the playbook of what a buyer would do as far as like the value add things. And he decided not to sell it, which is fine because I have it listed for lease. But I'm getting a little sidetracked here. But as far as dealing with rejection, I think it's really important when you lose a deal that you really need to ask yourself like what happened, and even ask the client what happened, because by getting that feedback, it might, you might win a bigger deal. Like losing that smaller deal might win you a bigger deal. And I know that's really hard, especially when you start out in the business, because it might be your first deal, or maybe you're struggling to pay your bills or that, but you really need to remember it's a learning experience. I'd be lying if I said I have a little bit of an ego too. Like I'm competitive and I'm good at what I do, and I'm not going to question that. So if I don't win a deal, it's because somebody outperformed me, or I didn't bring a tool to the table, and it's just looking for room for improvement.
I always ask for room for improvement, and I too have been told by people, well, I didn't know. If I had known those things ahead of time, then I would have chose you. So I think there's a little bit of a blend between being braggadocious and really making sure people know how capable you are. Because I do office and industrial, and I told the guy, I was a top office broker last year, and he's like, "You didn't tell me that," and he hired some other guy. And then sometimes you can fix things, sometimes you can't. Like I had someone who didn't hire me because I moved too fast. And I sent, I I came up to the result too quickly, and like she didn't like trust what I did. And there's nothing I can do about that. I move fast, talk fast, and that I can't really, I don't know that I can really change that for someone. But I did represent the buyer, and so I brought her a buyer, and we closed that about a month ago. So
and you made a valid point. You might not win the business because it might be something like you just have clash of styles, like your vibe's off. I think it's like having friends or anything like it. Like it's super important. Like you're going to be partnered with this client. If it's a 6-month lease listing agreement and maybe it's multi-tenant, I mean, you're going to be talking to that person a lot. You're going to be asking them questions. Like you're going to be talking about financial things, and obviously some personal stuff will come up. So even if it's as simple as like you just don't vibe with that person, I mean that's fine. I feel sometimes you'll see people change their style. They're a little bit of a chameleon. Is that that's the right one to win business, and it's like that comes out like so. I think it's really important for people just to keep their own style, because when you keep at it, like your clients will appear in that case.
Oh yeah, I mean, and it came out in this particular case that she told me she had multiple really long meetings at her office with the other broker, and she really felt really taken care of. And I was kind of like, well, I spend a lot of time with my clients and we have a lot of meetings, but we kind of get to the point as well. So I think, it's probably better that it didn't work out. So I think there's always some other better, opportunity. So.
Yeah. I had a retail listing that's probably 10 years ago. I had it for a couple of years, and it was kind of in the recession. So you're happy to have some deals. Super difficult landlord, like notoriously difficult, like in the brokerage community. But I handled it because we were doing deals, and at the time, making money was important. But when I kind of progressed and my industrial niche fell in, I just told him, look, like I'm not the right guy. I'll help you find somebody new, and we parted ways just fine. Instead of just like underperforming and him getting rid of me, which unfortunately a lot of brokers do. They just get bored with a listing, and instead of having that conversation and breaking up with their client, they just kind of let it fizzle out. Which don't do that. He called me a couple of years later, and there was I'm not going to tell you the project because it'll call out who it is, but there was a project he was working on that he was helping with, and we ended up doing 3 deals in 1 year for this project. And it's because I left that relationship open and I didn't burn the bridge. I was upfront with him and blunt and just said, hey, like, I'm not the right guy for this. And people remember that. And I think that's, again, what we were talking about. If you lose a deal, to have that thick skin that, this is a long-term business. It's get rich slow. You build relationships. And when you keep those relationships, people remember your professionalism and will come back and respect you for that. And I think that's all really connected as far as like learning from your failures and realizing that the thick skin comes from long term, and you'll learn from that, and people will definitely come back around eventually.
Absolutely. And if they don't, and they're not your vibe, then that's fine too. But I think leaving the door open is great. I mean, I sometimes get some listing requests and different assignments, and I'm like, oh, that seems, and I'm like, wait a second, have you done that a bunch of times? Are you going to be amazing at it? And if not, then, I refer it out, whether internally, externally. I think having someone have the best experience possible, leaving that positive impression, is the best thing that you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Do you have any kind of bookends that you have to your day, or different habits that you have that give you the momentum to do this demanding job? Or I guess you're so far into it. They always say you live for years 6 to 10. It might be not a cakewalk, but probably certainly easier than it was in some respects.
I really try to have fun with it. I'm if you've worked with me, I can get pretty intense when it comes to certain things, and I hate losing. But I have a lot of fun with this business, and I'm fortunate enough a lot of clients have turned into some of my closest friends, and it's like you're making money with your friends, which is cool. But I don't know. I just think over time you really get your own style. I bring my dog to my office every day. That's actually one of the reasons I'm at the company I'm at, which that was when I switched from Sperry Van Ness back in the day. I asked the brokerages, like, can I bring my dog? They're like, is it a service animal? I'm like, no, he's just my pet, but he's really well behaved. Like, he's laying here on the floor, but I don't want to move the camera. And NAI was like, as long as he's behaved, like, it's fine. And I was like, cool. Well, this is where I'm gonna go. So I think like just not taking things too seriously. But as far as like routine, I definitely notice if I don't work out regularly. And it's not, for me, it's not just the like going to the gym. I know you get a lot of this like Instagram reels where people are like, you have to pump iron and all that. But my gym is actually called Social City CrossFit. So it's a very social, it's a very social event. Like it's not a big gym, but people are like CrossFit. So it's like group workouts with weights, and it's like it's nonstop laughing. And obviously you're working out. That's the reason you're there, but you become friends with these people and you're there early, you're chatting and you're talking during the workout and afterwards. I think it's important, and it's not just the workout part, but you have something that you really enjoy that you do regularly, not burn out, 6 a.m. to 10 o'clock at night every night because you're shooting for some grand vacation. You need to have something in your life if you're really pushing yourself hard professionally that you enjoy every day. It could be 15 minutes. It could be an hour, like just whatever it is. Just make sure that's a big part of your routine. And mine is the gym, because I get to go, I hang out with friends for an hour and a half a day. I do that about 4 times a week. And it's my phone's away. I'm laughing. I'm decompressing. Like I realize life isn't that serious. And that really keeps me kind of grounded. And I mean, to be frank, in a good mood. Another one that is not my idea, but I don't look at my phone for about 30 minutes until I wake up in the morning. I leave my phone plugged in. I have a charger at my front door, and I have one of those old school beep, beep, beep alarm clocks. And I wake up, I mess around with my dog, I make coffee. I play with my dog, take him out. And when the weather permits, I go stand out in the backyard for a few minutes and just kind of, wake up without having to look at my Instagram and X and email and all that stuff. Because it just kind of wakes me up slower. I realize there's a big difference in my mood when I wake. My alarm goes off. I look at my phone. There's notifications, and then immediately you go Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, email, and you do some work. I've noticed that it's been a big difference for me to have a little bit of downtime as you wake up to kind of get your mind right and get going, pray or meditate, whatever you do.
I like that tip. I might be getting myself because you can't help. And one thing is, I went back to a desk phone in my office, and because I feel like if I'm using the app on my phone or texting people from my phone, I'm immediately distracted versus having the phone there and having the computer there. I think that's a great tip. I may deploy that. Because
another thing is I have two other productivity tips. One is when I'm like trying to get through a contract or something, I turn the Wi-Fi off on my computer and I turn my phone off. I don't put it on silent. I turn it off, and it makes it so no notifications can come up because there's no signal. There's nothing going to my computer. And the other one is, this one has been a big game changer for me, is I have a personal and a work cell phone. So I have a personal one that a handful of people have the number to. And when I'm on my motorcycle or at nighttime, like when I turn the work phone off, like that it's important to have that separation. And I think a really easy way to do that is have a personal and a work phone. Not to say people personally can't call your cell phone. Like when my mom needs to get a hold of me, her first call is my work phone because I have it with me. But if I don't answer that, she can get me on my, my personal phone because I'll have that on me if I'm walking the dog at night or something like that.
Did you make it 2 physical phones?
2 physical phones. I know they have those dual SIMs, but it doesn't work. I have this
The only way it works is if you have it forwarding into like your VoIP or something, and then you can toggle the hours for the VoIP so you aren't like distracted. That's what I do. But I do think actually I've had a lot of friends that say 2 phones, but I did once I had kids, I got like a personal number so that I could compartmentalize a bit better. Yeah,
I think that's, and if you do it, really keep it separately. Like, don't feel like, oh, this one client, I'll give him my personal phone to. Like, I just, like, there's a handful of people who have the personal number. And it's not even that I'm like some celebrity where I don't need people calling me. It's just, I really want quiet because during the day, as we all know, people are calling off of the internet, asking questions about a building. You're running through leases and people have questions on cams or whatever. I mean, your phone it's nonstop all day long. So I really appreciate having that like separation and quiet at the end of the day, so my brain can kind of shut down for a little bit.
No, I think that's very, very helpful. And it's something I did about 2 to 3 years ago, and it made a huge, huge change. And yeah, I keep it to more like friends and family and, people that I would have at my kid's baptism, or,
Perfect.
Come to a family event is kind of like the line of demarcation if people don't like it. I mean, I have a lot of people sometimes where they like sense it's not like my real, and they're like, is this really your cell phone? And I'm like, this is my number I use. And that's how I answer that question.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. People, they want to get, like, I travel a lot. Like I'm like, if you follow me on Instagram, like I just love traveling. Like I just got back from Japan. You know, I was in the Middle East over Christmas and New Year's, and like with the time changes and stuff, like I get back to people when I can, but I also realize like nothing is that urgent. Like your problems are going to be here when you get back. You're like, you don't need to be available all the time. It's okay to take a vacation where you're out of pocket for a week. Like, you know, obviously prep for it. Tell your clients you're gone. Have somebody else take your calls or get another agent to fill in for you. Like when I was out of town, there's an agent who was covering for me on a building that they really didn't even know. I gave him the brochure and the key. I just said, hey, if somebody wants to tour it, you know the questions to ask because you're an experienced broker, but just tell the potential client, hey, I'm filling in for Eric because he's out of town. He's on a motorcycle trip and he's not answering his phone. I'll go unlock it, walk it. And when he's back next week, you can talk to him about, you know, offers and that kind of stuff. And somebody ended up buying a building based off that response. So like, I think it's important that people realize too, it's okay to step away and go enjoy your life a little bit. Like just work as a team and have somebody fill in for you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I have a number of backups, and I love to travel too. So yeah, I think it's key and good for your mental. And I think it makes you a better commercial real estate, you know, professional. You have much more intensity and stamina to do great work for those you work with.
Yeah, I have two long-term clients. They always joke. They're like, you know, we know you travel a lot, but when you get back, you're working like 16-hour days, and it's like it's you just get right to it. Yeah, because you're refreshed and you're in a good mood. Your brain had a chance to kind of restart and come back fresh. It makes a big difference.
What if you're not going to do it now? When are you going to do it? Like, life's short. Enjoy it. Right. No, I love that. I love that. I think those are great. So you had the manual alarm clock, 2 separate phones, and was there any other tips, or was those the tips?
I still tell her I think it's important to have a day where you're unplugged. Sunday's mine. You know, I like to go to church and go hiking or snowboarding, or you know, the weather in Vegas right now is like perfect. So just being outside is really nice. I think that whole day of rest thing is a big deal. To really get your brain, it's like restarting your computer is the only way I can explain it. Like you just kind of need to reset and go. So no, those things that I said, the 2 phones, have a real alarm clock. I don't keep my phone by my nightstand, and I take a day off every week.
I finally shifted it because I was guilty of having, using like Sunday afternoon, Sunday evenings to kind of get organized for the week. And I said, you know, I had a few people like you say, like, you know, need that buffer day. And I started changing that, and I'm much more refreshed going into Monday, you know, by creating that kind of buffer and some peace. So I think space creates a lot of energy.
Yeah. I don't know. I figured it's in the Bible. God knows what he's talking about. So give that a whirl.
I go to Bible study on Tuesdays. It's not a secret. I posted on my Instagram, and they kept going through that lesson the last couple of months, and I'm like, fine, I'm listening. So I'm going to change. Like we kept going through Sabbath, and I'm like, and then someone called me out on Twitter about it. And I was like talking about what I was doing on Sunday, and like, well, what about the Sabbath? And I'm like, fine, you're right. Like I give it.
It's hard to step away though, because there's always something, especially in our business. There's always one more thing you can do. Right. And that's something I also yell about in our business is, you know, where people get stuck on, like, I don't know, it's a little bit of a pivot, but with when you're trying to do a deal and you have maybe a new agent, they're like, oh, well, I don't know what else to do on this deal. I'm like, there's always something more you can do. Like, do they not know what the numbers look like? Or did you not ask them like how they'd lay out the warehouse? Like I think it's important when you're like stuck on a deal to ask yourself, what more can you do? And my brain is always asking that on every deal I'm working on. Mm-hmm. So for me, it is quite a challenge to shut it off and walk away for a while. But often I find when I do separate myself, the answer comes to me in some random way. Like I'm a big motorcycle rider. I ride, you know, sport bikes and dirt bikes and that. And when you can't look at your phone when you're riding a motorcycle. And often I'll be like, riding around Lake Mead, or I'm doing a couple day trip through California, and I'll be like just randomly pulled over getting gas. I'm like, oh, I didn't even think of marketing the property in this way. So it's just you seeing different colors and smelling different stuff and being just somewhere else. Like changing up your environment is important. That is a lesson people should definitely know, is change it up. If you just have the exact same routine all the time, like you're going to get stuck in a rut. So like doing different things. It doesn't even need to be like grand things, but like maybe changing up your gym or going to play tennis if you've never played tennis or that kind of stuff. It really, I feel like that shakes up your brain and gets your creativity going, which that's half our business, is getting creative on how to get deals done.
I think creativity is I think it's something that you can be better at with, again, the space. If you don't have space to think and you're constantly under the gun and you don't have that space, then you can't think of those creative solutions.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, awesome. This has been, believe it or not, we've been chatting for like 40 minutes. So this has been awesome.
Well, we're both real estate brokers.
Yeah, I know.
We're both real estate brokers. I don't think a broker's ever been accused of not being able to talk for a long time. It's funny, on my calendar, this thing just popped up. I'm part of this, it's called Entrepreneurs Organization, EO. And they do this, it's kind of like SIOR, but for different businesses are part of it. And like, they have like chapters, just like SIOR does, like local, and they do guest speakers. And there was one, they have a workshop today. I had to cancel it, but it's all on like memory tools on how to remember things without writing them down. And it's a guy who's like a 2-time world champion on learning how to remember things. And they're doing a 2-hour workshop. And I saw the summary of it. And there's all these tools you can use to like, remember names and remember things about people. Like just doing stuff like that too, I think is really important, to just do stuff that's totally unrelated to our industry, but is also educational, comes in handy. Just all the randomness of it. But yeah, no, I appreciate you having me and taking the time. I'm always happy to do these kind of things because you just get nuggets of information, just talking to people. It's like coffee, except we're being recorded.
Well, next time we see each other, I do think the alarm clock thing will be very helpful for me, because otherwise I have far too much temptation to check out Instagram Reels too late at night. And I think it would be nice to have like more clear, defined separation. So, but yeah, this has been really good. Cool. So if people want to get a hold of you, what's the preferred method of communication?
You can go to our website, which is naixl.com, but I'm on all the social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and all my handles are at Erik T. Sexton, ERIKT Sexton. Pretty easy to find. Just Google my name and I'll pop up somewhere.
Yes. No, it's great. Yeah, that's where we connected, with social media. So you're very findable. So this has been great, and looking forward to chatting with you again soon. And I want to thank all my listeners for listening to another episode of the Performance Mindset Show. If it gave you something to think about, be sure to share it and subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And don't forget, you can connect with me at beyondcommercial.com or amycalandrino.com. Until next time, stay grounded, keep growing, and keep showing up for you.